well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Right of the Bear Arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. I'm glad you're with me on the program today. We're going to be talking about JD Vance, Donald Trump's pick for vice president. Linda Walker is the president of the Buckeye Firearms Association. She has known JD Vance for a couple of years. Actually met him right when he first started campaigning for the U.S. Senate seat in 2021. We're going to talk with Linda about her experience with JD Vance and his views on the Second Amendment here in just a second. Before we get to that, however, let's talk about this for just one moment. Economists warn that massive tax hikes could devastate your IRA and 401k account as the stock market braces for impact. With inflation on the rise and global uncertainty looming, it is clear why central banks and savvy Americans are turning to gold. And if you haven't had your eye on gold, well, it's time to make it a priority. Priority Gold. Trust their team of proven professionals to help you diversify your savings with gold and silver. Call 1-800-405-GOLD or visit prioritygold.com/golden for a free gold info guide. Plus, see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Experts agree that physical gold is one of the best ways to fortify your savings, no matter the economic environment. Act now to get your portfolio working for you while the market's golden. Call 1-800-405-GOLD to speak with a gold specialist or visit prioritygold.com/golden to learn more. That's 1-800-405-GOLD. Well, I got to say, I am excited about the nomination of JD Vance because I think this is going to be the first time in more than 100 years that we have a bearded candidate on the ticket for either major political party. So, I mean, just as a, bearded American myself, I am glad to see a little bit of representation here in politics. But I got to say, I went through and I posted something right after Vance was named as the nominee at Bearing Arms yesterday. I had gone through his background. I had seen what Democrats were complaining about. Honestly, JD Vance is pretty darn solid on the issue. He has spoken out in support of things like armed teachers. He has bashed, most recently, the attempt by Chuck Schumer to try to ban bump stocks via unanimous consent, calling it a distraction from bigger issues. There is, one little glitch, I guess, in his public comments going back 6 years, I think now. And we'll get into that with Linda Walker. But honestly, JD Vance already, for folks who know, he has an incredibly impressive background. But I think he also has a great deal of support and respect for the right to keep and bear arms. That's certainly the impression that I've gotten from his public statements. And I think you'll hear in our conversation with Linda Walker, nothing to dissuade me from that point of view. He seems to be really, really solid when it comes to our right to keep and bear arms, and that is a very, very good thing. All right, here you go. Let's take a look and listen to our conversation with Linda Walker, president of the Buckeye Firearms Association, about her experience with JD Vance. Linda, thanks so much for coming on the show today. It is so good to see you again.
I am excited to be here, Cam. It's been a while.
It has been a while. I know. Well, when we got the news that JD Vance had been tapped by Donald Trump to be his running mate, I reached out to the folks at Buckeye Firearms, and Executive Director Dean Reek said, who you need to talk to is Linda Walker. And so you have a little bit of history with JD Vance, right?
I do, and I am so excited. So, when U.S. Senator Rob Portman announced he wasn't going to run again, I think that was in 21, I guess. Mm-hmm. It became a very crowded race really quickly. And, I'm going, I really don't know who I want to support here. And then Brian Gray, whom I've known from the State House for several years, he contacts me, and he's the political director for JD Vance. And he goes, hey, I want you to meet JD. So we sat and talked at a Panera for about 2 hours. And I knew nothing about JD. I'd never watched the Hillbilly Elegy or read the book. We sat and talked. And one of the first questions I asked him, I said, hey, you were a never Trumper because, I've been on the Gun Owners for Trump National Advisory Board now for all the elections. And he kind of laughed and he goes, well, that was before he became the greatest president ever in my lifetime. He goes, I've completely changed my thoughts on Trump. And so my next question, I said, obviously, the Second Amendment is my cause. Where are you at on that? He goes, well, normally I go to the range every week. Right now, I've only got time to go, about once a month. And then he went on to tell me that his wife's family lives in San Diego. And he said the first time he went out to California to meet the family, guess what he did? He took them to the range in California. So, we had a really excellent conversation. Um, I consider myself a constitutional conservative. And I walked away from JD that day going, this is the guy I'm going to support. And, all his values, I would peg him as a constitutional conservative as well. So it's been an amazing ride with JD. I helped a lot on the campaign. Um, One of the few times I've helped on campaigns, as political director would call me, we'd chat, and I'd go, hey, why don't you guys do this? Within a couple days, I would see it implemented. And this was time and time again. And then election night, I was at the victory party, and he gave a speech with his family up on the stage. And when he came off the stage, I was the second one who hugged him. And he goes, we did it. We really, really did it. And I think we might both have gotten a little dust in our eyes right about then. But, for him to be in this position now, oh my gosh, I am so excited. So,
I mean, so it sounds like, obviously, Linda, you talk with a lot of politicians, right? And
yeah,
there are some of those politicians they'll say that they support the Second Amendment, but there's always a sort of implied but, or they say they support the Second Amendment, and then they say something that leaves you scratching your head. It sounds to
yeah,
me like that's not the impression you got with JD Vance. This is a guy who is a gun owner himself. He understands the issue, or I should say issues. It even sounds like he understands the difference between gun laws in Ohio and gun laws in California.
yeah. I'm thinking it was probably about 3 months before the election, the general election, when he was elected. He actually hosted a gun owners and a sportsman roundtable. There were about a dozen of us invited to it. And, a lot of people like to bulk the gun owners and the sportsmen together. It's really two different things, big time. And JD, he was asking both sets, what do you want me to do? And then he self-professed. He goes, I'm not a sportsman. I'm not a hunter. He goes, I'm relying on you people to please guide me in the right direction on, the hunting issues, the conservation issues. And he did mention during that time, he goes, you ought to see my new AR-15 though. So he's had fantastic reach out to gun owners, to sportsmen, and him and Don Jr. are really good friends. And as we all know, Don and Eric are big gun guys.
Yeah.
And so I know Don was really pushing to have JD as the VP, and so I'm feeling pretty comfortable about our Second Amendment with JD for the, may I say, next 12 years.
Maybe so. Maybe
Yeah.
so. Right. Yeah. It's interesting because, I went back through yesterday. We kind of had an inkling, first the news broke that, okay, it's not going to be Rubio. And then the news broke. It's not going to be Burgum first. Then it wasn't going to be Rubio. So I had a little bit of advance time to start to look at, JD Vance's record. And I got to tell you, Lynn, the only sort of glitch, if you even want to call it that, came way back, and I think it was 2018. It was like 3 weeks after Parkland. He was talking to the Darke County Republican Club, and he said that he supported red flag laws. Now, I know that he does not support red flag laws anymore. I'm curious, did you ever have any conversations with JD about whether or not he feels like he has evolved on the issue, or was that a momentary, my God, we've got to do something a bit for him? Did you ever talk to him about that?
We've not had that discussion because, when we met for that 2 hours initially, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
Here's my experience with your younger politicians. I've been doing this for 20 years, so I've spent a minute or two in the state house and around politicians, and it seems like, and I know for myself, the older you get, the more evolved you become on issues. You settle into where your thinking is. I know we've got some politicians in Ohio, and I'm not going to name names, who, when they were 30 years old, they were a little green on some of the issues, but they evolved. And, I evolved on the Second Amendment. I certainly was never, this. And, in the 90s, when Kasich was the deciding vote in Congress on the 94 assault weapons ban, and when he was the deciding vote, my husband went ballistic. I said, well, what's the big deal? Well, now I clearly know what the big deal is. And bringing this back around, I've evolved. I've seen a lot of politicians evolve in what their thinking is. Let's call it maturity. So I really don't have any concerns about the Second Amendment with JD.
Yeah. No, and you're right about the evolution. And I think, I mean, obviously that is a common experience in Second Amendment circles, right? I mean, I love to ask people that question of how did you get involved? How did you grow up around guns? And for a lot of people whose answer is no, I didn't grow up around guns, there was that change of heart. And it wasn't always a light bulb moment going off over their head where it's like, oh, now I get it. A lot of times it was a slow, gradual, I'm terrified of guns. Okay, but I still need to know how to use one. So I'm going to go to the range. Okay, I had a good time, but I don't know if I want to own a gun, right? I mean, that's a process for a lot of folks. And the one thing that I will say about JD Vance is that it doesn't appear like there's been any flip-flopping, right? As I said, there was that one comment in 2018, but since then, he's been consistent in his message. And by the way, Vance wasn't even a candidate in 2018. This was, right after Hillbilly Elegy was, I think, bought by Netflix. And that was why he was sort of in the news and why he was of interest as a speaker. But, in his time in politics, he has been very consistent in support of the Second Amendment, including things like, Faster Ohio, right? The Armed School Staff program that Buckeye Firearms is, intimately involved in. He is, and it sounds to me like, maybe I just want to make sure that I'm not reading too much into this, but it sounds like Vance, I get the impression obviously he's a very bright guy. But I get the impression he likes to kind of drill into these issues. A lot of times, again, with politicians for whom Second Amendment is not their big issue, they have maybe a surface level understanding of some of what we're talking about. I get the sense that with JD Vance, it goes deeper than that.
Yeah. As soon as he was sworn in, I think it was within a couple weeks, the train wreck happened out at East Palestine, Ohio. And he was literally the first politician out there. He's been the only politician consistently out there multiple times with those people. And he really showed just with that event his true colors of how much he cares for people. And, him getting involved in that issue so immediately, he was thrust into that. And to see his dedication to those residents out there is amazing. And I really, comparing him to Trump, obviously Trump loves our country, loves the American people. And, I see that in JD. He was willing to go to war for our country. And while he was as a Marine, he was in Iraq, and he didn't mention that last night on Fox, but he's a warrior. I'm so darn proud of him. And so, in his book, when I met with him that first time, I'd never read the book, had not watched the movie. The next day I came home and I watched the movie. And I'm so glad I didn't watch it the day before I went to meeting, because I would have gone into full mom mode. Like, oh my God, your childhood was awful.
Right.
He came from very humble beginnings, and he talked last night about, he calls his grandma who raised him Meemaw, and he said Meemaw would get Meals on Wheels, and she would literally beg the people. It's like, give us more food, so she would have enough to feed him too. So, clearly he was not born with a silver spoon in his mouth. And you look at him, he's become a millionaire over the years. He's truly an American success story.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. You're absolutely right about that. And I was thinking about this last night, Linda. So Joe Biden started the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, staffed it with all kinds of gun control activists. Now, if Donald Trump wins in November, I expect that office will be shut down. But I suppose it's always possible. Kamala Harris is supposedly in charge of the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. So I suppose it is possible that President Trump could name Vice President Vance to oversee that office. And maybe instead of, folks from Everytown and Giffords and Moms Demand Action staff in that office, maybe would see some Buckeye Firearms Association individuals. Do you have any interest in moving to D.C. at all, Linda? Fighting for the cause from the West Wing?
No.
Okay.
I
had a feeling.
Ohio.
I had a feeling, but I bet you could come up with a short list of good folks for JD Vance to tap if in fact he is in charge of that office.
Maybe President Trump should put him in charge of hiring the next ATF director.
There you go.
I mean, I don't think Dettelbach's gonna survive that one. So
no, I think if Trump wins in November, Dettelbach's going to be looking for his next. He'll probably get hired by a gun control group. To be quite honest, that'll probably be his next step. So we will. Let's hope. Let's hope.
As long as he stays out of Ohio, because he's the one who ran against Attorney General Dave Yost.
That's right. Who is now being mentioned as a potential replacement for JD Vance if Vance does win the vice presidency. I've heard his name suggested. I've heard Frank LaRose. I've heard Matt Dolan. I've heard a couple of names in Ohio. And I'm seeing your reaction to some of these.
Dolan, Mr. Anti-Gun, Strong Ohio. Yeah, I'll carry that bill. It was the most vehemently anti-gun bill ever in Ohio. Yeah, we don't want him. Frank LaRose, absolutely. I did support Frank for the primary. And, I've already given Dave Yost my support for our next governor.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we are going to be paying a lot of attention to Ohio. I think the elevation of JD Vance, Ohio has traditionally been a swing state. I think it's safe to call it a Republican red state right now. But again, I think it is going to take on national importance because of Trump's pick. And Linda, I really appreciate you joining us, giving us some background, your experience with JD Vance. I don't think that there's a lot of heartburn among gun owners over the pick. I haven't heard any. But it is nice to hear your firsthand experience with a candidate and the nominee as somebody who is a gun owner, somebody who does understand the Second Amendment and what you've been able to see from him over the years. So thank you.
Yep, I'm feeling confident. So you spread the good word, because now we need the citizens of the rest of the United States to know how awesome this guy is, and he's our future.
Linda Walker, president of Buckeye Firearms Association. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. And let's do this again very soon.
Okay, Cam. Thanks.
My thanks to Linda for joining us on the program. By the way, here is the picture. I don't know if this was at the victory party for JD Vance or just during a campaign event, but there's Linda Walker posing with the next vice president of the United States, JD Vance of Ohio. And again, appreciate Linda sharing her experience with JD Vance. Who knows? Maybe we'll be able to get the senator on the program here himself in a few weeks or a few months, at least before November anyway. We will certainly put in the request. All right, before we turn to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report, let's talk about this for just a moment. At the very heart of our democracy lies a principle that we hold sacred, free speech. It is the cornerstone that supports every freedom we cherish. Yet in today's digital age, discussions about our wealth, our rights, and our future are being silenced or overshadowed in mainstream narratives, which leave many of us feeling voiceless in conversations that are crucial to our financial independence and security. This is where Wealth Protection Research steps in, armed with a mission that's never been more critical. Wealth Protection Research is not a financial advisory firm. They're defenders of free speech, committed to giving a voice to the silenced. That includes financial experts, particularly the voices that challenge prevailing narratives, especially as we navigate the uncertainties of the 2024 election. Wealth Protection Research has created a 2024 election wealth protection report that highlights the 3 best ideas for protecting and growing your money headed into the election this year. It contains ideas the mainstream media won't touch, but you can get it absolutely free. Just text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy. If you believe in the sanctity of free speech and the importance of financial freedom, then act now. Text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy of this 2024 election protection report. It's time to widen the scope of what we're told, to hear the ideas the establishment doesn't think you can handle, and to take control of our financial destinies. Text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy. All right, so let's turn our attention now to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, our recidivist report. Well, actually, we were just talking about Ohio, so let's stick with Ohio for our recidivist report today. Here's the headline from Cleveland 19. Cuyahoga County prosecutor calls out juvenile court judge on light sentence for violent offender. Cuyahoga County is essentially Cleveland. That's what we're talking about here. The prosecutor in question, Michael O'Malley, who says that he is, quote, fed up with juvenile court judges letting kids skate on serious charges. He says whether it's guns at our neighborhood parks, shootouts on local streets, or the incident, we've had throughout this community, it's clear that sometimes or oftentimes, he says, the juveniles are the crime drivers. And he adds, if we're not reaching them as juveniles and not teaching them right from wrong, then what chance do we have when they become adults? He pointed to one recent incident as an example of the failures of the criminal justice system. In March of last year, there was a 17-year-old who carjacked a 32-year-old man at gunpoint. And in February of this year, he was found guilty of aggravated robbery with a gun. According to O'Malley, the same suspect had already committed other crimes, including leading police in a chase in a stolen car when he was armed, twice. Now, those, again, had already happened before this carjacking. But O'Malley says a juvenile court judge sentenced the teen to 1 year probation. He was not placed on house arrest. He wasn't even given an ankle monitor, which, as we know, really doesn't work. But not even that little bit of security theater. And O'Malley said, quote, within 3 months of being put on probation for a carjacking, he's in another stolen car with a gun, speeding 85, I believe, and a 25, and he hits an innocent victim, severely injures them. But he also kills an individual who's riding in the car with him. That crash happened in May of this year. O'Malley says the teen ran a red light and then crashed into a car driven by a 55-year-old woman. The 17 and 18-year-old girls who were riding with the suspect thrown out of the car after the crash. The teen boy ran away. The 18-year-old woman died. The 55-year-old woman and the 17-year-old girl had fractured spines and other serious injuries. And O'Malley says, I think 99.9% of the public would think that if you're doing an armed carjacking with a history of previous violent crime, that you should probably receive a punishment that includes a term of the Ohio Division of Youth Services. And O'Malley actually shared a photo of the judge who sentenced him on social media, saying, I think it's important for the public because ultimately it's the public who puts jurists in their position. They put me in my position. And, you can't hide from that in the reality that that's part of the responsibility and what comes with this office. And he says, and I'm not saying that being a juvenile court judge is an easy task, but, you're trying to balance rehabilitation and public safety. But there comes a point in time where some things become more obvious. With a lengthy violent history, at some point, again, it has to swing towards public safety. And he's absolutely right. I mean, think about that again for a second. You've got this 17-year-old who's almost an adult under the eyes of the law, right? He's still being treated as a juvenile. That's why he's not being named by Cleveland 19 or the prosecutor. But he's got a history of violent offenses when he goes before this judge for the armed carjacking. Now, the goal of the juvenile justice system, again, is rehabilitation, right? So what rehabilitation is going to take place when you sentence a kid to a year probation? No house arrest, no electronic monitoring, no community service, no drug or alcohol testing that we know of. Basically, just maybe the drug and alcohol testing. But more likely, check in with your probation officer once a month, once every 6 weeks. Don't get arrested again. That's not rehabilitation. That's not teaching this youthful offender anything other than, hey, guess what? We're not taking your crimes very seriously, so you go on and commit more, which is exactly what happened here. So I know nothing at all about the prosecutor in Cuyahoga County. I don't know if he's pro-gun control. I don't know if he's anti-psych. I don't know. But I do know when it comes to talking about the affairs of the juvenile justice system, he's spot on. In the case that he highlighted, I mean, it's one case, but incidents like this are happening dozens of times a day, every day, in courtrooms across this country. All right, turning our attention now to today's armed citizen story, where prosecutors say a shooting in Indiana appears to be an act of self-defense. We do have a bit of a recidivist report in this story as well. Fatal shooting of Newcastle man appears to be self-defense. That's the headline. This actually was in Anderson, Indiana, where it took place. Madison County Prosecutor Rodney Cummings says a 40-year-old man, Michael Piercy, approached a stranger in downtown Anderson about 10 p.m. on the night of July the 8th, hit him in the face, and then took his phone. That's when the victim produced a handgun and shot Piercy. Piercy, described in police reports as being homeless, was pronounced dead at an Anderson hospital. Madison County prosecutor says it appears that the shooting was in self-defense under circumstances that could otherwise have resulted in Piercy being charged with robbery. Again, he was in the commission of a violent crime when he was shot and killed. Now, to add a little twist to this, the Star Press of Muncie, Indiana reports that Piercy had compiled at least 10 convictions in Henry County, Indiana, since 2001, including battery resulting in bodily injury, burglary, carrying a handgun without a license before Indiana was a constitutional carry state, domestic battery, failure to register as a sex offender, which would indicate sexual misconduct with a minor. There you go. So convicted felon, possession of methamphetamine as well as theft. According to the State Department of Corrections website, he was most recently released from custody in April of this year. So again, another individual with a lengthy criminal history. We don't know how long he spent behind bars this last time around or how much time he was eligible for. But once again, at least the appearance of a revolving door of justice and an armed citizen who thankfully was able to protect himself from a career offender in Indiana. Finally today, our good deed of the day, in the right place, at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. The terrifying headline. New Jersey fishermen save New York City swimmer found 2 miles from shore after treading water for hours. I mean, you want to talk about saving a life. That's a pretty good way to do it. 34-year-old man apparently went into the water at Breezy Point in Queens and was then swept out by the tide. Man said he'd been treading water for several hours before he was found by the fishermen about 2 miles from the New Jersey shore. Police got a call about 9 a.m. on Monday that a commercial fisherman had spotted a swimmer in distress about 2 miles away from the shoreline of Sandy Hook. Fisherman and his son able to grab the guy, pull him out of the water, take him onto the boat, and then took him back to Monmouth Cave Marina in Port Monmouth, where officers met the swimmer. He was seen by medical personnel, found to be in good condition, despite having been in the water for several hours. Officers gave the swimmer, who identified himself as Pete Ordain of New York City, dry clothes and food before arranging a ride back to the city for him. The Middletown, New Jersey police commended the fisherman and his son who live in Port Monmouth. They say they don't want any credit. They don't want any attention. They want to remain anonymous. But the Middletown police say that they saved Ordain's life. And sounds like that very well could have been the case. I mean, out there for already several hours, some of your body gives out. And thankfully, Mr. Ordain is alive and well today because of the quick thinking and the good eyes of those fishermen in the right place at the right time and willing and able to do the right thing. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Game and Company. I want to thank you for being a part of the program as always. Hey, tomorrow we're going to be talking with our friend Rick Ector from Rick's Firearm Academy of Detroit. He is getting ready for his annual training session. He is hoping to put 1,500 women through several hours of free firearms training in the Detroit area. It's coming up in the next couple of weeks. There is still time to register. We're going to talk all about it with Rick. This is a fantastic event. Rick does it each and every year. And this year, I am hoping that he is able to have a record-setting attendance. So we're going to do a weekend to help him out. You'll hear that conversation with Rick Hector again tomorrow on Bearing Arms Cam & Company. But be sure to check out bearingarms.com throughout the day. We're keeping you up to date on all the latest Second Amendment news and information. And I will remind you that we have a big sale going on right now for our VIP and VIP Gold memberships. Just use the promo code MAGA24, MAGA24, and you can get 60% off your VIP or VIP Gold membership. You'll get exclusive content, an ad-free experience, the ability to comment on stories, but you will also be supporting the independent pro-Second Amendment journalism that we're doing at Bearing Arms and saving money at the same time, which is always a good thing. Again, just use that promo code MAGA24 for 60% off your VIP or VIP Gold memberships, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Until then, be well, be safe, and be free.